Greetings and welcome back to the Christian News and Views. This is episode 6. And we're going to be looking today at election coverage. But before I begin with the news, I just want to share with you my own personal displeasure with the way things are done these days, in elections in particular, but overall in the political arena. When I was a lad, not yet a man, I was already interested in the politics in our country. Back then, Democrats and Republicans disagreed on issues, but both parties were civil about it. No matter who was in power, the two sides could sit down at a table and hash out agreements that became law. In the elections, the only violence I remember was at the Democrat National Convention, which I believe was in Chicago. And it was between Democrats. It had nothing to do with Republicans. And they ended up finding some way of agreeing with one another and going forward. That was back then. Today, both parties engage in violent rhetoric. But while both parties are guilty, to be honest with you, I'm 81 years old, I've lived a while, and I've been observing things, and I have to say that most of the blame rests with the Democrats. Now, I'm not saying it's just the Democrats. The Republicans have done their fair share, but the majority of it has been by the Democrats. And I'm not just talking about the election, but it's been going for this election, but it's been going on for a while now. I still remember one election. I've forgotten the year. I know the subject was, I believe, the subject was Social Security, one of their favorite topics. They were saying that the Republican Party was going to do such and such against the Social Security. Republican Party has never done anything like what they were saying or say today. But they, like, that sells or gets votes rather for them. Now, here's what they did with their ad. It took an elderly lady, I'm assuming she was elderly, they could have used makeup and everything, and had her in a wheelchair, and they then put a man behind her, pushing her. This man obviously was the Republican Party. And he proceeded to push her along and then pushed her right over a cliff. This was their ad against the Republican Party, and I believe the subject was Social Security. It was graphic. I still remember it to this day. And for me, it set a very low standard, a level that should never be seen in politics. Shouldn't be seen anywhere on TV, but those days have come and are here. But when we're talking about an election, it should not be seen. These are people who want to represent us in the best possible way. And how can this be the best possible way? It can't. It has no place in politics. It was shocking back then. Now we take it and we just shrug our shoulders probably if we see the same thing. But back then it was a new low. And it stood out because of that. There was just nothing else comparable to it. Now, for the news, which is still about the election. I am sure that you have heard about Biden's garbage glitch, is what I call it, the garbage glitch. I don't know if you've noticed this in the past, but anytime Trump says something, his statements get twisted and often taken out of context. Well, this time it wasn't Trump saying something, it was a comedian who is a supporter of Trump. And he got up and he made a joke. It was, by all measures, an insensitive joke. He talked about Puerto Rico calling it an island of floating garbage. Yes, that's definitely insensitive. But for that particular comedian, it was normal. if given me, if I'd made the choice and I knew that about him, I wouldn't have had him on because I wouldn't know what he's going to say. Comedians and others don't necessarily tell the people who hired them what they're going to say. They just go out there and they say it. And to be honest, this was part of his normal routine. He doesn't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, man or woman, young or old. This is apparently his gig, if you will. It could have stopped right there, and if it had been, it could have reflected back on the Republican Party, and they would have had to clean it up. But President Biden came to the rescue and came up with a Trump, saying that Trump supporters, that's all, everybody that supports Trump is garbage. That's the news part, and I admit that some of my opinions got in there a little bit. But I still acknowledge it. Here is my opinion. This whole episode begs the question of Biden's entire presidency. The only people thinking that his statement was proper were a few of his chosen, his closest people, servants, political advisors, and things of this nature. Interestingly, he chose the moment to do it at the same time that Kamala Harris was giving a so-called unity speech. Now that unity speech in itself, it was bad enough. Her idea of what unity is totally different from mine. I have a dictionary here, and that I'll get into in a moment. But some experts have pointed out that she was given the chance to distance herself from the president's remarks. And if she had, it might have helped. But she didn't take it, which is basically the same thing as agreeing with him. We're talking about half the country they're calling garbage. Bad judgment and a stinky attitude. So here's some more news. Election news. On a TV show where Trump showed up and was talking, he talked about the Democrats being war hawks. And he talked about how they like to start wars and so on and so forth. They have a history of starting wars. Usually the Republicans come into office and have to clean it up. Now that's a historical background. But he was referring to her as a war hawk, and he said he wondered how she would react if a gun was put in her hands and there were 9 rifles pointed at her. Well, the outrage from the Democrats and media about Trump saying she would face a firing squad was tremendous. And the vice president spoke about that his statement and criticized Trump. Now, the statement by Trump was obviously a reference to putting her in the front lines. His point was that while she was willing to send men and women into war, where they would face rifles and other weapons aimed at them, she probably would not do so well if in the same circumstances. He was wondering. It was obvious. When you see things, you got to take things in context, folks. You don't just take this soundbite by itself. Look at it in context. And in context, you can tell what he meant, what he was saying. The Democrats in the media twisted it and took the statement out of context. But in her speech, Kamala accepted the media outrage and identified with it. Now, this is her speech when she was asked about it. But really, her unity speech wasn't that much better. But it's almost as though President Biden was aiming it at that particular moment. We don't know what he was thinking, and I don't know that he would know what he was thinking. But that's when he did it, was right while she was giving her unity speech. Now, I think she has a different dictionary than I do. My dictionary has a different includes different words than what she uses. It includes words like accord, uh, affinity, agreement, cooperation, but it does not include conflict, discord, taunt, and the like. That is my opinion, and I encourage you that whatever your opinion is, express it in the voting booth. That's where it belongs, and that is your right and your duty. You have a great day. If you haven't elected, get out there and vote. If you haven't voted, rather, get out there and vote. I'll see you in the next video.